In today's episode, we're going to talk about when you find yourself attracting the same partner over and over again. And it is such a hot topic with my clients. And quite often, like the main reason they come to me in the first place, because they're feeling just really stuck with it. They don't know what to do. And if this is you, you might be feeling like there's something wrong with you or confused as to what's happening. And it's just so important that you know how to shift this pattern, because doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is incredibly frustrating. A few years ago, I worked with this beautiful woman who came to me because she was attracting the same type of guy. Specifically, she was attracting emotionally unavailable men. So initially, it looked really different to her, like the starting of the dating. It looked different. They looked like different people, looked like they were available, looked like they were able to support her. But when things got a little bit tough, or she became a little bit vulnerable, and underneath the surface stuff, they just weren't available for her emotionally, and they weren't able to meet her needs. And the message that she got from them was that she was too much, that she was being too difficult, that this was all too much hard work. And the messaging around all of that was that it was her fault, that she wasn't able to, that she had some sort of level of emotional needs that were higher than the average human, which just wasn't true. They just weren't a good match. It was just that she had these men that weren't able to meet her needs emotionally. So when she came to us just feeling like really lost, and it felt like she was banging her head against a brick wall. Have any of you ever felt like that, just feeling really stuck and just not sure what to do differently? That was her. So what we worked through together, we're going to go through in this episode. And it's really about supporting you to change any pattern that you find repeating in your relationship. So that could be that you find yourself in relationships with men that always cheat on you, or people that, I don't know, party a lot, or that are just, they're not able to be there for you emotionally, or they're avoidant of conflict. That usually when I work with people, there's some sort of pattern that resonates throughout all of their past relationships. So that is what we're going to go through in this episode, how we can work through that. So when we started working on why this was happening and she took the action around it, she started seeing a trend in the men that she was attracting becoming more and more emotionally available. And I suppose available in every sense, in that they were able to meet her needs emotionally, but they were also able to be there for her and be more present with her. It was just really cool to notice the trend of, like, when she was doing the inner work, the outer world shift. And it's a pattern that I see quite often with clients. And as a coach looking from the outside in, that's really cool for me to witness, because it shows that the work that is being done is making a change externally. So I remember her coming to me saying, she's now in a really healthy relationship, but I remember her coming to me and saying, this is the first time I've experienced what a healthy relationship is like. And it feels a little bit weird, but I love it, and it was so cool for me to hear that, because to see where she had come from to where she is now, where she was even then, it was just really amazing to see the transformation and to see that when this inner work is done, how the external world can shift. Because so much of this repeating patterns and things, repeating patterns, themes, everything throughout our lives is unconscious. And as Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And I just love that saying. So it's all about bringing the unconscious up to the conscious level so that you're aware of it and you can do things differently. Because while it lives in that unconscious space, it's really hard to do anything different. There's many, many reasons why we repeat patterns, and so we'll just get into a few of them. The first one is self-worth and your beliefs. So it's important to look at what you believe you are worthy of, or what you believe you deserve. And sometimes that will come out in the language that you use, how you talk about yourself. It will come in your thoughts. It will, if you ask your friends the things that you say, they'll probably tell you. And it's really important that you look back at those relationships and see, what did you put up with that's less than you deserve? What behavior did you put up with that is less than what you deserve? Because that will be a real key as to your self-worth and what you believe. The next is a lack of clarity around what you're looking for. Like, do you know what you're looking for in a relationship? I have to say, I don't know, percentage wise, but a lot of women, like let's say 80, 90% of women come to me when they're ready to start dating and they're like, okay, they think it's all about like, how do I set up my profile? How do I get out there? Where do I find these men? And then when I say, what are you looking for? People are like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, what are your values? I don't know. What, like, most people don't know what they're looking for or what their values are. So get really clear around what you're looking for in a relationship and know that it's not too much. I'm sure, many of you have been fed those messages from friends and family lovingly, but they're limiting in that you are being too fussy, you just need to settle down, all of that rubbish. So just get really clear on what it is that you're looking for. The next part is like unresolved patterns. So sometimes we subconsciously recreate patterns and past dynamics in an attempt to resolve unresolved issues or traumas from our past. So it might look like you becoming attracted to familiar traits or behaviors because you've got this hope to fix or change the outcome this time. And there's so much more to it. But in my work, it's all about how can we make the unconscious conscious and change the repeating pattern of attracting the same guy over and over again. So let's get into that. Let's get you those practical steps that will change the game for you. So the first step to this is awareness. Awareness is so key because when you're aware, when you act from that unconscious space, it's really hard to make changes because you're just not aware of what's happening. And that's how we live majority of our life. Like we live 95% of our life unconsciously moving through the world. So there's many ways that you can get that awareness. One is journaling, meditation, self-reflection on what are the patterns that you're noticing pop up in your life now. And it doesn't just have to be around relationships. Like, this crosses over all of your life, but what are the patterns? What are the themes that you see repeating in your life now? Then you can reflect on your past relationships. What are the patterns that you noticed throughout those relationships? What were the commonalities between the relationships that you noticed? If you map them out on paper, I bet you'll find that there's some sort of trend happening with your relationships. Then you can ask loved ones if they've noticed any patterns or themes in your past relationships, because when someone looks from the outside in, they can see stuff differently. It's very different because you're so in it. Everyone is so in their own stuff that it's really hard to get perspective sometimes. So if you can ask loved ones, and I get that this is vulnerable because you're opening yourself up to feedback, but you're asking for it. If you can ask them, did they notice any patterns or themes in your past relationships that perhaps you haven't picked up on, that will be able to support you. And the last step is hiring someone who can notice your patterns, like a coach or a therapist, because I know the way that I work is when I first meet with someone, they might tell me their whole history of relationships, and I can start to notice the patterns and the themes that have gone on in those relationships and let them know that that's where I'm seeing a trend happening. So a little bit like your friends and family, but I suppose someone just a little bit more trained. So the second step is to becoming clear on what you want. What are your values? When you are not aware of what it is that you're looking for, it's really hard to know when you've found it. I'm sure you've heard the saying, when you get in the car, if you are trying to find a destination, you don't have your maps on and you don't know where you're going, it's a bit hard to get there. Like you might get there eventually, but you also might go through like a million different streets that aren't on your way. So become really clear on what you want. Like what is on your list? What are your values? What's important to you? So this also includes working on your self-worth. So it's really important that if you've written your list and you're clear around what you want, that you look at that and think like, do I deserve that? Is that something that I feel like I'm worthy of? And if not, then it's the work done around the self-worth. Okay, and then it's about taking action. So, when you start dating, it's a really cool time to see what patterns or themes pop up as you date and put boundaries in place. Like it's never too early to put boundaries in place, never. Like a really good example that I use with a lot of my clients is when you first start dating someone and they might call you a nickname like Darl or Babe, and you're not comfortable with that. If you say to them, hey, Joe, I would like to be called by my first name rather than Darl, how they respond to that boundary being put in place says everything. So if they say to you, yeah, right, like, I'm only joking, don't take offense to that. that's not very respectful and a little bit of a red flag. Or if they say to you, oh, gosh, I'm so sorry, it's just a habit of mine. And of course, I'll call you by your name. They have two very different responses to your boundaries. And how you start off setting boundaries is how it's going to probably continue. So just take notice of that. So therefore, it's never too early to put a boundary in place, because boundaries are a direct reflection of your self-worth. So the three things to do is awareness, clarity, and your boundaries or taking action. Right? Once you get those three, watch the patterns change in your dating life. Like anything that's still showing up highlights the work that still needs to be done. So it's really cool to just become aware of this stuff. The more that you notice what continues to show up, it's not that you haven't done any work, but maybe there's a little gap there. Maybe there's a little block that needs to be worked with. And that's what people are there for, to support you with. Boundaries and people pleasing is what we're going to be talking about in the next episode. So get ready for that, because that's another juicy topic that is hot that I really want to talk about. And I know this is a lot to take in. So if we're not already friends on socials, please follow me there, as I know that all of this content and more is there to support you on your journey to find a connection that lasts a lifetime.